Welcome to the Krusty Fox, and following a brief hiatus, Sex and the Shitty is back in business. And what a note to return on, since we're up to Season 3 episode Drama Queens. As the title implies, this time out only the most f***ed up behaviour will do, and so expect a bit of this.
He's just so comfortable and safe.
Are you dating a man or a minivan?
This.
Yes, he'll know what it's regarding. It's regarding my future husband, Phil. Okay?
And this. Don't forget to overreact with a like if you enjoy the video, cause a scene by subscribing for more like it, and throw a messy tantrum if anyone tries to stop you staying until the very end for this week's top comment and question. We join Carrie during a spot of the Night Terrors, as she wakes with a start on consecutive nights with a strange feeling of impending doom. Unwisely, she writes off the credit card bills like phone books and list of people she's pissed off longer than a shopping addict's CVS receipt as potential causes. She eventually decides that it's her unproblematic relationship with Aiden that's giving her the scaries, which is so sad that I almost can't bring myself to make a joke about it. That said, these early hours jump scares are probably more like psychic warnings, as though she's jumped shows into That's So Raven, but all of her visions are about mistakes she's going to make with her winking Henry.
Remind ya, I'm kinda wet, running down my vagina.
After Carrie complains bitterly about her non-issue at breakfast with the other ladies, Miranda tries to sell her on the positives of the situation. Her method is to compare it to her predictable dynamic with Steve, but all she succeeds in doing is making a relationship with him sound like slowly dying of hypothermia. Charlotte is once again forced to be the voice of reason, calling Carrie out for never being satisfied no matter how a man treats her. She corrects this disturbance in the force in record time by whipping out a book called Marriage Inc. This, she thinks, lays out her path to marital bliss through business-like networking to access the single friends of married couples. This is how you can tell it was written based on a noughties as opposed to 80s sense of business etiquette, and by a woman as opposed to a man, because Charlotte isn't neck deep in a sack of coke or trying to conceal the body of an escort beneath the table. That night, Samantha is getting down to business with ear, nose and throat Dr. Mark when he whips out a bottle of recreational Viagra. Ms. Jones initially seems lightly offended, but after he gives her a practical demonstration in which he fills her out like a prescription, she starts to see the upside. On a walk with Aiden, Carrie angrily pleads with him to tell her why none of his past girlfriends ever put a ring on it, clearly hoping for some devastating revelation to justify her neurosis. Instead of an admission that he's building a vaginatorium out of a harem of murdered ex-fiancés, Aiden cannily disarms her with an invite to meet his parents instead. Clearly unimpressed by his persistent refusal to morph into an emotionless drone who feeds on neglect, Carrie gives him a non-committal answer. At dinner with married friends Amy and Dennis, Charlotte asks them for a male tribute to fill her husband vacancy. She does this with a bug-eyed intensity that suggests it's for a version of the Hunger Games that's just her pursuing 23 unarmed men around an arena with an engagement ring and a knife. They eventually volunteer apparently cute internet businessman Phil, whose name Charlotte reacts to like this.
Yes, Phil.
Over at Miranda's place, she encounters what I'm just going to go ahead and label an at least predominantly heterosexual male problem while doing the laundry. Steve's left some skiddies in his tidy whities. Rather than bulk buy toilet wipes, or more reasonably burn down her apartment, she elects to tell Carrie about the Bovril barcode in Steve's Y-fronts. This leads Miranda to wonder if they've actually fallen into a rut, instead of considering whether Steve needs to go to some sort of reform school for anal hygiene. Carrie's not listening though. She's waiting for Miranda to shut the f*** up so she can finally talk about Big again. She wonders why, when Aiden's offering everything she wished Big would have, she isn't able to fully engage with it. Miranda optimistically suggests that it might be happening too soon into their relationship, despite the truth very clearly being that Carrie isn't happy unless she's miserable. She ultimately spins this into more flattering terms for this week's headline: do we need drama to make a relationship work? Days later, Charlotte hasn't heard back from Dennis about prospective victim Phil. Abandoning the professional approach entirely, she makes a series of progressively unhinged but ultimately unsuccessful calls demanding updates, like Ghostface trying to locate an Uber Eats driver.
Where the is my Taco Bell?
She does eventually reach him and sets up a date at one of her favourite bars, swallowing Dennis's suspicious excuses because a book told her to. Let's hope her next trip to the library doesn't see her stumble across a copy of Misery. At Aiden's showroom, Carrie's malaise about her terribly difficult, perfect relationship continues to intensify as she waits for him to take her to dinner. She pulls him aside, parrots Miranda's line about it being too early to meet his parents, and asks that they see each other less in order to miss each other more. This is balmy even for Carrie, but Aiden reacts with a supernatural and frankly unrealistic calm. The patron saint of patient partners he may be, but any real person faced with this kind of blatant self-sabotage would surely have long since told her to go jump back up her mother.
Go jump back up your mother!
Samantha, under extremely close medical supervision at Mark's place, decides to pop one of his Viagra to see what effect it might have on her. Because where curiosity might kill another woman's cat, it just makes Sam's hungry. This results in Sam arriving with less la petite mort and more le floc hurlant, going number 3 with such ferocity that Dr. Mark looks like he'd have had a less traumatic evening if he'd taken a cock-eating demon out to dinner. After she develops a one-pill addiction to the little blue scaffold erectors like they came directly from the lab of Walter White, Mark calls it off between them, and I assume gives the cock-eating demon a second chance. Charlotte eventually invites Carrie on the opera date she originally intended for Phil. Mid-show, Bradshaw takes a break from the deeply boring spectacle unfolding on stage to notice the distant landmass of Mr. Big's head gawking at her from the opposite box. Suddenly feeling as sick as the rest of us do every time he pops up like a chronic yeast infection, she manages to dodge him and heads home early. Big is therefore forced to trudge back to his actual wife, like a man who narrowly avoided having his penis degloved by an electric sander but can't quite grasp the lesson that should have taught him about doing nude carpentry. Another of Carrie's trademark middle-of-the-night calls to Miranda to discuss the incident proves mutually beneficial. Miranda gets to distance herself from the encrusted thicket binding Steve's cheeks together, and Carrie remembers that there are worse things than an emotionally available man. Like being an emotionally available man in a relationship with Carrie Bradshaw, for example. On her scheduled date with international man of mystery Phil, Charlotte's quest to locate him in a room full of identical men is interrupted by the surprise arrival of Dennis. He admits that there is no date because he'd quite like to have a go at Charlotte himself, to her understandable horror. Say what you want about Charlotte, but what we do know about her by now is that she doesn't shop vintage, especially when it comes to pre-loved husbands. After a well-deserved slap, she makes a swift exit with Dennis trailing behind, repeatedly professing his barely week-old love like a horny tickle-me-elmo.
Elmo needs a really big dip.
In her rush to escape him, Charlotte falls into the path of an oncoming taxi.
Taxi! Taxi! Ah!
Any hopes she might have had of filing a fraudulent compensation claim are dashed when none other than new love interest Trey MacDougall and his stupid floppy hair hop out of the cab and rush to her aid. Not quite the fairy tale beginning she might have pictured, nor will it have much of a fairy tale ending. But at least it's a step up from auditioning to be a friend's side piece and being called a After 2 days of screened calls to Aiden, Carrie decides that enough time has passed since her last act of lunatic selfishness and stalks him down to the cafe where he's having breakfast with his parents. After a brief attempt to explain her recent actions, which only reinforces the fact that he should probably chuck some scrambled eggs in her eyes and run, he takes her inside to meet Mother and Father Shaw. If only he'd known, he could have saved himself some time by introducing her as the lying, cheating succubus who never met a second chance or an ex-boyfriend she wouldn't f***. But that, of course, is a story for another time. Which brings us to last video's top comment. I asked whether you'd ever been or ever would be bothered by a partner's body count. Enter Moonbat, who dodged their current boyfriend's goo pipe for over 2 decades due to him whittling his bedpost down to a nub. Hey, even man deserve love. And a full workup down at the free clinic. This week's question is, do you prefer a partner who's always available or one who plays a little hard to get? Answers in the comments below please, and the best will make an appearance next time. Either way, thanks for watching, and remember, if you can't be good, be crusty.